Hi, I'm Chef Sandy. I have the absolute pleasure of cooking for guests aboard my luxury sailing catamaran, Yacht Reve, in the Virgin Islands of the Caribbean. After a detour of a career through Wall Street, I finally found my passions again, and I'm doing two of the things I love most in the world, sailing the Caribbean and chefing for my fabulous guests as we explore beaches, islands, cuisines, and ingredients throughout the Caribbean. Please follow me on Instagram at Yacht Reve and on Facebook at Yacht Reve. It's spelled Yacht, L-E-R-E-V-E. So today we are making a starter of a crab, avocado, and mango stack that's served with tortilla chips. Then our main course is crispy pan-seared mahi-mahi over a wasabi mashed potato with a sesame soy reduction. And finally for dessert we'll have a classic key lime pie. Let's get started with our key lime pie. So we're going to do a classic key lime pie for dessert, and we're going to prepare this first. That way it's out of the way. It also needs to chill in the refrigerator for ideally a couple of hours up to overnight. And it's nice that it can sit overnight in the fridge. That way you can do it a day ahead if you're having company, and you can just relax that next day and not have to worry about dessert. So what we're going to do first is make our homemade graham cracker crust, and it's super easy to do. And I know that they sell graham cracker crusts in the market, but don't be tempted because it is so much better to make it yourself, and they're really delicious. So I'm gonna just in this Ziploc bag, open that up, and I'm gonna use, we want about half a cup of graham crackers. So I usually, sometimes the different manufacturers are different sizes, so I usually do about 5 or 6. It doesn't hurt to have more, and then if you don't need that many graham crackers, you don't have to use that much. If you're, have any aggression, you can get it out on your graham crackers. Get your rolling pin and just pound on them. So this is super fun. And we're just gonna get these nice and fine. You can also do this in a food processor. So then we're gonna roll them out just like this until they're really fine. So you want it to be pretty fine, but it doesn't have to be, super granular. Once we do this, we will add a couple of other ingredients that we'll go through. So just let me finish rolling it out. And awesome. So we are going to make sure that we have about half a cup. Again, it's really not, you don't have to have rocket science precision here. So we are going to get half a cup of these. I have my measuring cup, my bag. I have my measuring cup right down here. So just grab half a cup. And sometimes I use a little extra. That's a little heaping half cup, but that's perfect. And we'll just set these aside. And now we're going to take a 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt and add that to the mix. This adds a really nice punch. So the sea salt is really important, as well as 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar and 4 tablespoons of butter. I personally like to use salted butter. It's totally up to you, but I prefer it. We're gonna melt that down before we add it to the crumbs. I have already melted some back here, so we're just gonna go ahead and pour this right in so it's beautiful. All right. So we're going to mix this up until it becomes the consistency of, everyone says wet sand, so that's a good gauge. So I'm just gonna grab a spatula, stir this up so it's beautiful. I think you can probably see. All right, that looks perfect. So we always want to give it a little taste to make sure. It's also delicious, so it's nice to take a taste of it. So that looks great. Perfect consistency. Let's just grab a tasting spoon, give it a little taste. It's perfect. In this case, my butter is not salted, so I'm just going to add a touch more salt because, like I said, I like that punch. So here we go. I just have some salt right here. I'm just going to add probably a little 1/8 of a teaspoon. All right. Okay, perfect. The next thing we'll do is I like to do mine in a springform pan. And a springform pan is one of these little guys that has a little lever on the side, and then it kind of comes apart when you take it apart. So we'll use that. I also use a little nonstick spray, and we will just dust him lightly. I did wash my hands before I started because I'm about to put my hands in here, so just so you know. And we're just going to put the crumbs all around the bottom and press it down. Sometimes when I'm cooking for guests, I use gloves to do this because it just is a little bit neater. So this is just perfect coverage. This is a perfect amount in my springform pan. This is an 8-inch springform, okay? And this is just absolutely the perfect amount. We will cook this in a 350-degree oven just for about 5 to 7 minutes, and you'll see it start to brown a little bit around the edges, and that's when it is good to go. If you're using a convection oven, I do it at 325, all right? So we'll slip this into the oven for just a few minutes, and we'll work on the filling next. So next we need to prepare our filling. So this is super easy. Let me walk you through the ingredients. This is a can of sweetened condensed milk, okay? Just very simple, right out of the can. And I'm just gonna put the whole can in here. Then we'll need to separate 3 eggs, and we use just the egg yolks in that. All right, we'll separate 3 eggs. I have my eggs right here. There are a lot of tools sometimes people use to separate eggs. I tend to just do it by hand. Just be careful not to get that shell in the mix. Okay. All right, so here's 1 egg yolk. It's perfect, beautiful yolks. Now you can even take these whites and do another dish. So maybe next time when we get together, we can do a gorgeous coconut macaroon. And that's one of the things I do with my leftover whites. And I dip those in dark chocolate, and it's amazing. And sometimes I'll serve those also as chocolate dipped strawberries. Sometimes guests maybe not like coconut or want something a little lighter, but no one can resist a chocolate dipped strawberry for sure. All right, so here's our 3rd egg yolk. Just get all that white out of there to make our custard really rich. Okay, so we have 3 beautiful egg yolks, and I'll just add that right into the sweetened condensed milk. Next, we need to juice our limes. So this is a little bit labor intensive, not really. It just takes a minute. So sometimes I put on some music, just have a good time. I've washed these limes already. So we're going to just go ahead and cut these guys up and put them through a juicer. I use a hand juicer. I find I get a lot of leverage out of it, and you'll see it works great. It's important also to just save a couple of your prettiest limes because we need to zest a couple of these and get 2 teaspoons of lime zest. So that's a beautiful one. I'll put I'll put 3 aside, all right? And then I'll cut up a few more. Recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of lime zest. I do 2 lightly packed teaspoons. It's pretty powerful stuff, so you don't want to overpower it. So I find that 2 lightly packed teaspoons is just perfect for this recipe. Let me check my crust. He's looking good. I'm going to give him a couple more minutes. When I chef on the boat, I always have a timer going, but I did not bring a timer because I think it would be distracting to everyone to have it beeping all the time. So you have to pardon my timing. I'm just going to have to work with it. So this is my press that I love. I put 3 or 4 of these key limes in here at once and just press it, and all the juice just comes out. These are beautiful key limes. And then I tip it over, and there's a little bit more in there. So like I said, I typically do about 4 limes at once, but I always come back for a second squeeze because there's still a little more left in there. So we'll just go through this. We want ½ a cup of key lime juice. So we'll do this until we have that much. All right, we're getting there. So what I'm going to do next is go ahead, before I come back and give these guys a second squeeze, I am going to zest my limes. I have this beautiful microplane that I love. This is fabulous. This is also great with ginger, which we'll do in a little bit. But I just take my lime, and when you zest these, you want to get as much zest as you can, but you don't want to go too deep. It's important not to get the white part of the lime. Okay, so we're just going to go. You'll see I'm kind of turning it around and going here, and the zest is coming off, and I tap it, and it just falls off. So that's the deal. So we'll do this until we have about 2 teaspoons, and I am about to turn around and check that crust again because I want to make sure he's doing well. So let's check that out real quick. Okay, that crust looks really good. So let me grab him. I'm just going to take him out of the oven. Oh, it smells good. I can smell it. So we'll take it out of the oven and then we'll fill it with the custard when we're ready. Looks absolutely perfect. When I first started making this recipe, I would either forget to zest or I just, for some reason, zested the limes after I had squeezed them. Don't do that. It doesn't work very well. Sure to note this. It is critical to use a key lime, not a regular lime. Regular limes are called Persian limes, and they're beautiful for many things, but not for key lime pie. And please don't use bottled lime juice. It really needs to be fresh. And if you can't find fresh key limes, just make a different dessert because it just won't be the same. But when you can find them, it's fabulous. And they're pretty easy to find. All right, we're looking pretty good on that zest. Let's give it just a check and see about how much we have. This is one, you know, like I said, it's not, you don't have to be super precise, but I do like to have a gauge just so I know what I'm dealing with. A lot of chefs cook just kind of by eyeball, which is fabulous. I tend to cook for different numbers of people on a regular basis. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's 8. So I like to measure because I like a really predictable result, and then there's just not a lot of questions about what's happening. I would like just a little bit more zest, so I'm just gonna kind of freehand a little bit more and just till you're happy. Okay. So now let's take the zested limes, we'll cut them in half, we'll juice them, and then that is it for our ingredients. We'll just mix everything together and then put it back in our shell, our pie crust, and cook it up. Then we'll refrigerate it and let it sit in the fridge for a little bit, and when we're ready, we'll take it out, we'll garnish it with a little bit of whipped cream, and again, some lime zest. What I tend to do on the garnish, though, I have to admit, is I garnish it with the zest of the Persian lime, the regular lime. Reason being, sometimes those limes are darker, and it just has a better color, and it really, you know, you can do that. It's not a problem. So, all right. Experience the wonder of a holiday at sea in the Virgin Islands or New England on your very own private yacht. You'll experience a fantasy-filled week of white sand beaches, amazing sunsets, gourmet meals, and the best time you can possibly imagine. Make memories with your friends and family that you will never forget. Email us at info@sailthedream.com or visit www.sailthedream.com for more details. Okay, everybody, we are back, and we finished squeezing our key limes. So we have a half cup of juice here, and we have our sweetened condensed milk, our lime zest, key lime zest, and our egg yolks in this bowl. Now, key limes do have a lot of seeds, and as we squeeze them, the seeds, you know, come on out. So I have this great little strainer. This is fabulous. You can use one of any size, but I love this little handy size. So I'll just strain the lime juice right in here with the rest of the custard ingredients. And I captured a lot of seeds. I don't know if you can see them, but there they are. So that's all set. So now we just will take our whisk. I love this whisk. It's a rigid one. I have a silicone one that's more flexible, but for the key lime pie, I love my rigid whisk. And we'll just whisk these ingredients together until they form a smooth custard. And once that's finished, we'll pour it right into our prepared our crust that we already made, and then back into the oven at 350 for probably about 7 minutes. If your oven, you know, check it after 5, see what you think. You don't want it to start browning around the edges, but a little bubbling is good, and that's when you know you're getting there. So I will show you what it looks like. Oh boy, this is just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. The color is beautiful, and it doesn't get any better than this. So beautiful color, beautiful consistency. So now we're ready to just go ahead and pour that into our crust. I will get out a spatula so that we don't lose any bit of this, and we'll just pour it in. Just move this a little bit closer to me. When you work with a springform pan, make sure to grab it by the bottom. Sometimes if you grab it by this part, it can fall open, which has happened, so we don't want that. All right, so we'll just pour this in. Amazing. And we'll just use this spatula to get every last little bit of that custard. Okay, now this will just go into our oven at 350. Sometimes I use a convection oven. And there I do it 325. But here we have regular oven. We're going in at 350. About 7 minutes, check it after 5, see how it's looking. And then that's it. And then after that, we'll pull it out, put it in the fridge to cool. A couple hours, but again, up to overnight is fine. And then we will garnish it with a little whipped cream piped around the edge and a little bit of lime zest on top, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It gets oohs and ahs when you bring it out to the table. So here we go. My oven looks like a perfect temperature. All right, and so we'll let him cook and we'll be back. And the next thing we're going to do is a garnish for our main. It's a coral twill, it's beautiful. It's a little persnickety. It's probably the most persnickety part of this whole meal. It's easy enough to work with, and I'll explain why as we do it, but it's gorgeous. Again, it's a real showstopper. So we'll come back and we'll get that one going, and we will see you in a few. Okay, it's been about 8 or 9 minutes and the pie looks like it's ready to come out of the oven. So we're going to just pull this out. Again, be careful to hold it by the bottom and not the sides of the springform pan. It looks beautiful, so we'll just put it right here. Here's how I test it, right? It's a little jiggly, which is great. I just take a finger and carefully, and I'm used to hot temperatures, but I just touch it so lightly. Perfect. It's not gooey, it's good consistency, and it's just custard-like. So this now will go into the fridge, and it'll just stand by, cool a little bit, and then we'll pull it out later before we're ready to serve, and we'll give it a nice garnish. So I am going to just move this out of the way, and we're going to get that in the fridge, and then we'll roll into our next item. All right, we're ready to move on to our next thing, which is actually going to be the garnish for our main tonight. So this is a coral twill. It's beautiful. It is a little temperamental and persnickety, like I said earlier. It's forgiving enough, and if you know what, if you do it and you don't like the way it turned out, it's simple enough. Just do it again. The other beautiful part is, if you make it and part of it doesn't come out like you want it, part of it's overdone or underdone, we're ultimately going to break this up and we use it as a garnish, so you can just discard the part that you don't like the looks of. So with that said, we are going to mix a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Let's get all of that out of there. We have 1/3 cup of water, and we're just whisking this together in a small bowl. And this one is really more art than science. You know, we'll decide exactly how much of this we're going to pour into our pan as we go. With that said, I'm going to turn around here. I'm going to get my pan onto a medium-high heat and let him come up to temp. Now the fun part is we're going to add some food coloring. So I'm using red food coloring. This is fun to do. Sometimes I do purple, sometimes green, but I usually do either red and or purple. I use about 5 drops, but you can absolutely, if you want it a deeper color, you can do more. Black is also a really cool color to do. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you get 6, it's fine. And I take a look at it. I might like that a little deeper, so I think I'm going to go ahead and add, a drop or 2 more. Okay, that's going to be perfect. Now when that cooks up, it's actually going to deepen a little bit more. So let's test our pan and just see what the temp is back here. This one, we want it to be a good medium high, okay? And for this one, I'm gonna take probably about a tablespoon of vegetable oil, or you can use canola oil, vegetable oil, avocado oil, any flavor neutral oil, and that'll be perfect for this. So I'm just gonna add that to my pan. And again, we're going to let that come up to temp. I came up with an analogy, and I hope for when my pans get hot, right? When you throw the water in the pan and you really don't hear anything, there's maybe a couple of pops. That's kind of like when you're at a comedy club and the audience isn't warmed up yet, so it's not ready, right? Then you test it again, and then you kind of get like polite applause. And then you're getting there. But for this, and sometimes that's where you want to cook, but for this one, we want somewhere between polite applause and standing ovation. That's approaching polite applause. I don't know if the camera can pick up that sound, but we're getting there. So I'm going to let that just heat up a tiny bit more. I'm going to pour this in the pan, and this is again where I said it's the persnickety part. I'm going to pour it until I feel like stopping, and that's up to you. When you practice, you'll get it, and you'll have your own way, because your stove may cook at a different temperature. So and your pan may be a different temperature. So, all right, so we're going to be pouring our batter for our coral twill right into the pan. And we're going to do this kind of until we're satisfied with how much is in there. I know that's not very precise, but you just have to do it until you get the hang of what it should look like. So I'm just going to go right in. And that, I'm going to need to turn up the heat just a little bit on that because it is not quite where we want it yet, but we'll get it. It's coming. And you can see little bubbles beginning to form. So we just need to give that some time, and that will cook up. All right, our coral twill is coming off the heat. It's beautiful. We have just the right amount of the little holes there, and that's going to look gorgeous when we break it up and plate it with our wasabi mashed potatoes. So I'm just placing it on the top of a couple of paper towels just to absorb any extra oil that may be there, and we'll just set this aside and we will use it when we're ready to plate. Okay, so we're going to do the first step of our crab stack, and the first thing we're going to do is make a spicy remoulade sauce. I have everything all measured out. I have a 1/4 cup of mayonnaise, and we're just going to combine all these things together and mix it all up. So we have a 1/4 cup of mayo, get all that out of there. I have a couple of teaspoons of shallots. I have let's see, this is a 1/2 teaspoon of tarragon. You can use between 1/4, 1/8 and 1/4 teaspoon of crushed red pepper depending on how spicy you like it, and a 1/2 teaspoon of diced capers. All right, so we're just going to put that in. Then we have a 1.5 teaspoons of Dijon mustard and about 1 teaspoon of white wine vinegar. In case you're out of white wine vinegar, you can also use rice wine vinegar. All right, next we have a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. I like to use garlic powder in recipes where the garlic is not cooked because I find that sometimes it can become overwhelming when it's just raw garlic, so garlic powder works just great. We're doing a 1.25 teaspoons of lemon juice, and finally a 1.5 teaspoons of chopped fresh parsley. We're just going to mix all this together and let these flavors marry, and then ultimately we will be mixing this in with some amazing lump blue crab, and that will form the crowning glory layer of our crab stack. So we'll just set that aside and come back to that in a little bit. So we're going to be assembling the ingredients for our crab stack. I have about a 1/2 pound of beautiful blue lump crab here. First thing I want to do is I want to just check it to make sure there are no pieces of shell, because anytime you work with a product like crab, lobster, you run the risk of picking up some shell. I don't want to break up the nice big pieces of crab, so I'm going to very gently just take a look and make sure and see if I see anything. I'm just holding it so I can see in the light, and it looks really nice. This is a really nice brand that we have here, and they really do prepare it carefully. I am not seeing any bits of cartilage or shell, so that's great. So I'm going to combine it with about 1/3 cup of remoulade, and we're just going to fold this in gently. Again, we don't want to disturb our beautiful crab, so we're just going to fold this in until it's all incorporated. And we will set this aside until just before we're ready to plate the crab stack, and we'll mold it up together. So that is perfect. It's beautifully mixed. Might add in a tiny bit more, but that's just right where we want it to be. All right, so we'll go ahead and set him aside. That's our top layer of our crab stack. So the next thing we'll do is our mango layer. So I have a beautiful mango. Mangoes, when you purchase mangoes in the market, you really want to buy them a couple of days ahead of doing this dish because they're really not usually ripe enough yet. When I cut the mango, I like to take it, you want to put it on its end because there's a pit that runs this way. It runs vertically through the mango, so you need to cut on either side of that pit. So we stand him up on his end, and be careful because he's a little wobbly. Just hold on to him and just slice right down the side, like so. And then you have a beautiful half mango. And the way I've prepared this, you can see it's really pretty and it's easy to do. You just put them down, and when you do this, you always want to make sure that you have the mango on your cutting surface. And you just slice almost all the way through the skin, but not quite, in each direction. And you can turn it when you get too close to your fingers, each direction. This mango is a little bit less ripe than the others that I had. Once we do that, you can just flip him over, flip him open, and he does that beautiful flowering thing, okay? So awesome, right? So I'm going to use these other three that I have. They're a little bit more ripe. So I just take this, and again, very carefully placing it on the cutting surface. Now we can just cut these little pieces off. And when we make the mold, sometimes it's easier when the pieces of the individual components are a little bit smaller, and helps things to mold together so that they don't fall apart once you do your mold. So what I do to that end is, instead of cutting at the very bottom, because that would give me a larger piece, I kind of cut, halfway through. And these don't have to be exactly uniform, because it's all going to be put together in this mold. Sometimes I wait to salt and pepper until the end, because the salt does draw out some of the liquid, but here I like to put it in a little bit ahead of time, so it'll help break it down, and again, it helps make that mold stick together. So I'm just opening my pepper. I'm kind of cutting around here to get rid of the filaments, and I'm just going to stop because I don't need all that. A couple of slices, probably do about a tablespoon of diced red pepper. It just really is a beautiful color in the mango salsa layer. I'm just going to go ahead and dice these up. I have my jalapeno already diced. If you like it spicy, feel free to add the seeds. But if you like it a little bit milder, you can just remove the seeds and the white filament in the jalapeno, and that will bring your spice level down on the jalapeno. As we mentioned, I would like to do a little salt on this. I'm not going to do pepper just for aesthetic reasons, but fresh ground Himalayan salt goes in there. Just get a little stir. It looks great. And I'm just going to add a little touch of lime juice. Now, if you have fresh cilantro and you would like to dice some cilantro in there, that's great. Some people don't care for cilantro. There's actually a gene that it may cause cilantro to taste like soap in your mouth, so some people just can't tolerate it. I personally love it, but that way you can decide whether or not you want to use it. All right, I'm going to do one more mango, and then we'll move on to the avocado. So for the avocado, it's just simply the avocado and a little bit of lime juice and salt. I have scored these. I cut them in half. I took the pit out, and when you take the pit out of an avocado, I'm going to demonstrate it without the pit in there, but pretend like the pit is in. We just keep it on the cutting surface, watching your hand, keeping your hand clear. Pop it with your knife, and then twist, and the pit will come right out. And so that's how you're able to do that beautiful score. So then we'll just scoop this out into our bowl. Again, when you do this, the smaller pieces are a little bit better because it helps it to mold together. That one's beautiful. This one's beautifully ripe. Oh, that's fabulous. Okay, so there's our avocado. Add a little bit of lime juice. And a little bit of salt, and we'll set this aside. And we'll come back later. What I like to do when I finish preparing my avocado like this so that it doesn't turn brown, I just take a piece of cling film and just press it right down on the avocado itself, and it will last like that for a couple of hours, especially when it has lime juice in it. And then you can just come back. And as I mentioned before, again, just having this sit around for a minute is going to help as we mold it. It'll help everything to stick together. All right? Okay, so we are on to the star of the show. This is our beautiful mahi-mahi. Now this is boat-caught mahi-mahi, so we actually caught it off of my charter yacht, which is fabulous. So we are going to be cooking that up, and we're going to serve along with that soy ginger reduction, and it has a lot of other components to it as well. So what's going into the sauce? We have 1/3 of a cup of soy sauce. I use the reduced sodium kind. We have 1½ teaspoons of honey and 1½ teaspoons of brown sugar. We have about 1/2 tablespoon of fish sauce and 1½ teaspoons of sesame oil. We have about a teaspoon of garlic, 1/8 teaspoon of crushed red pepper. Again, if you like it spicier, feel free to add more. We have about a teaspoon of fresh ginger, and then we have about 1/2 tablespoon of lime juice. So we'll put all this together, and we will whisk this together, and then we will put it over the flame, and we'll just kind of bring it up to a good rolling simmer, not quite, not a boil, and then we can just for those flavors to combine, and then we can set it aside until we're ready to plate. All these are great ingredients. Now this ginger, normally when I do ginger, I like to freeze the ginger root and then I microplane it, which is a really awesome way to do it. Give this a good whisk together, and I'm also adding in about a half tablespoon of lime juice. So we'll whisk this together, and then we'll put it over a low flame just until it kind of starts to bubble a little bit, and then just turn it off. The intent is just to get the flavors to come together. Then this will be the base of our mahi-mahi dish. We'll serve mahi-mahi over a wasabi mashed potato, and this will be the base underneath that. So I'll just put it on the stove. All right, we'll just put that on a low flame. All right, and we'll let that go. Next, we'll take care of the mahi-mahi. So we have these 3 beautiful pieces of mahi. I have covered them with a little bit of Dijon mustard, and the intent there is to just add another layer of flavor, and also helps them to kind of get a little bit of a crust on them as they cook. And it turns a nice, beautiful brown color. Then also just a little bit of salt and pepper on top, and then we'll be ready to put those on the flame in a moment. Okay, so we're preparing the crispy potato topping for the mahi-mahi, and basically all we have is just some shredded potatoes in beautiful long shreds, so that's fabulous, and we're just going to cook those in a little bit of oil until they become nice and crispy. So I'm going to throw these in, and then I'm going to tell you, oh beautiful, it's a nice applause. So this dish has gone through a significant amount of evolution. I first started doing the potatoes in a different way, and I just didn't like, I sliced them really thin, and I just didn't like the way they crisped up. I didn't feel that they crisped up enough. So ultimately, because I still wanted that crunch element, I went to this method of just doing the shredded potatoes, and it's really nice. Now, absolutely shred your own potato. Do not buy frozen potatoes to do this. So all we are going to do, and these will cook up pretty quickly because this pan is pretty hot. All right, we just finished our crispy potato topping, so now we're going to put our mahi in. We're going to put it in mustard side first, all right? And when we put it in, we'll place it in a clockwise direction just so we can keep track of which piece went in first. And also when we put it in, you want to make sure not to overcrowd the pan, because what happens is that will bring the temperature of the pan down, and then it won't let your mahi cook the way you'd ideally like it to. So we'll leave it in on this side for about 3 minutes. We want that mustard to develop a nice crust on the bottom, and it'll just be beautiful when we flip it over. Okay, we're ready to finish it all up. So the first thing we're going to do is mold our crab stack. So we're going to take our avocado layer and just place it in the bottom of this hollowed out can. Oop, I dropped a little bit, but that's okay. We'll just place it there. And the key here is that everything needs to mold together. So what we'll do is take the lid, we'll place it down and just give it a little push to get everybody nestled in together. Then we'll bring that out. We'll put in our mango layer. And I like to use about even amounts of mango and avocado. It looks good that way, and it molds up better that way. All right, so same thing, we're just going to press it down. Give it a little firm. You don't want it pressed so hard that it comes out the bottom, but you just want to make it so it's got a nice foundation for this beautiful crab that we'll be putting on top. Oh, that looks amazing. Smells great. There's our crab layer. And one more time, we'll take that can top, and just be careful you don't cut yourself. It's sharp. We'll just press that down, okay? I'm just going to clean up my plate a little bit. And if anything happens to leak out, you can just wipe it up a bit. We're going to be serving these with a little corn chip. And if you feel like it, you can make a fried plantain chip. Those are always awesome. So when you're ready to go, just put your finger on the top, say a quick prayer, and here it comes. It's our crab avocado mango stack. 3 beautiful layers. It's amazing. All right, so we will serve this with some corn chips, and that will be our appetizer. All right, and then now we'll move into plating our main. And what we're going to do is take this is our soy ginger reduction, and the first thing we'll do is ladle just a little bit of this into the bottom of the bowl. Try not to splash. I splashed a little bit, but that's okay. We can always clean it up. And I like to kind of round it out throughout the bowl. Once we've done that, we'll take our potatoes. Now I like to serve a wasabi mashed potato, so I have some wasabi right here. I just like mix it in. I put in about a teaspoon of wasabi per serving, and it all depends on how spicy you like it. Most people really enjoy a lot more wasabi, but sometimes people just want a little bit of a hint of that flavor, so you just mix it into your mashed potato. And also the beauty is if someone doesn't want it at all, you just don't even need to serve them any of that. So just take your wasabi mashed potatoes right in the center there. Looks perfect. And now we'll just take our beautiful mahi-mahi. Piece right here is fabulous. And we'll just plate that right on top of our wasabi mashed potatoes. I like to press it down just a little bit. And then our garnish that we made earlier, our coral twill, we'll just pop that up right back. And you just want to make sure you have enough of a margin of the potato so that it can just stay right there in the dish. And there we have our pan-seared mahi-mahi. We do want to coat it with some of our crispy potatoes. That really just adds that crunch element and makes it a little bit more complex. And also, this is where we want to finish it with that finishing salt. And just a little shot of this. This is Maldon sea salt, and it's really just elevates pretty much everything, including sweet and savory dishes. So there we have it. Crispy pan-seared mahi-mahi over wasabi mashed potatoes and a soy ginger reduction with a coral twill garnish. All right, next we'll just move on to plating our dessert, our key lime pie. So we have it right here. And I will just move the mahi off to the side a bit. So we're in our springform pan. It's beautifully chilled. So we're just going to pop this out of the pan. I did use a little bit of nonstick on it, and it should just pop out perfectly. Boom. All right, looks good. Need a little bit of encouragement to come out there. And we will finish that with a little bit of whipped cream and then with some lime zest. I used this whipped cream on the boat because it's just easy, but you can certainly make a homemade whipped cream. This is one of my little cheats, but it works great, and it's so beautiful when you pipe it on. There we go. Look how awesome that is. Okay, then finally, just to make it look absolutely perfect, we'll take a Persian lime and just do a little zest on top, okay? My biggest fear is that one day I'm going to drop the lime on the pie. Haven't done it yet, and I don't want to do it today. But that just adds that little extra elevation just with that gorgeous contrast with the lime color. Just like we said before, you want to make sure not to microplane too close to the pith because that will make it a little bit bitter. But there you have it. Beautiful key lime pie. Thank you so much for joining me today. I thoroughly enjoyed cooking this for you. My name again is Chef Sandy. I'm a chef aboard Yacht Reve, a luxury sailing catamaran in the Caribbean. Next time we get together, I hope that we're filming from my yacht in the beautiful Virgin Islands, where I can't wait to show you some fantastic scenery and make some more of my wonderful dishes that are a lot of fun and I just love to prepare for my guests. Thanks again, and I cannot wait to see you next time.